You know what the real tragedy about all this is? I'm not even supposed to be here today!
Number 20, Blade Runner. Ridley Scott's masterpiece wasn't regarded as so much of a masterpiece back in 1982, but that's only because Scott's creative vision had been butchered by meddling executives. In the studio-imposed happy ending, Deckard reveals through voiceover that Rachel doesn't have an expiration date, and the two peacefully fly into the mountains to begin a life together.
I figured I wouldn't get the headaches or the shakes anymore, not for a while. It was good enough for me. I hope it was good enough for her.
The director's cut was released 10 years later, and not only did it imply that Deckard was a replicant through the inserted unicorn dream, but it removed the happy ending to conclude the story on a more ambiguous note.
It's too bad she won't live. But then again, who does?
This is the ending that Scott always intended, and it's certainly more in keeping with the movie's overall tone. Number 19, Clue. Much like the board game it's based on, Clue has many different possible endings. In fact, the movie was released with 3 different endings, and each theater received a different conclusion. In the first ending, Yvette and Miss Scarlet conspired to kill Mr. Body, and Scarlet is arrested.
Wadsworth, don't hate me for trying to shoot you.
Frankly, Scarlett, I don't give a damn.
In the second ending, Mrs. Peacock is revealed to be the killer, and she is arrested while Wadsworth takes the other guests for dessert.
Would anyone care for fruit or dessert?
And in the third real ending, Clue goes full murderer on the Orient Express and reveals that everyone is the killer, with each person having killed at least one character.
They all did it!
It's also revealed that Wadsworth is the real Mr. Body, and he is killed by undercover FBI agent Mr. Green. Number 18, Orphan. This horror film sees grieving couple Kate and John Coleman adopting a mysterious and creepy child named Esther. In a bizarre twist ending, Esther is revealed to be a 33-year-old Estonian woman named Lena who suffers from a hormonal disorder. During the final confrontation, Lena is killed by Kate, and Kate and Max are rescued by the police. The alternate ending is far more pessimistic. Foregoing the climactic battle on the ice, the movie ends with Lena reapplying makeup, undertaking her Esther persona, and meeting the police with a polite curtsy.
Hello. My name is Esther.
The implication is that Esther manipulates the authorities and goes free, potentially to torment another unsuspecting family. Not only is this scarier, but it nicely opens the story for future installments. Number 17, Die Hard with a Vengeance. The third Die Hard film ends on a suitably heroic note. McClane figures out the location of Simon Gruber, and the authorities arrive to arrest him and his men. After Simon escapes in a helicopter, McClane shoots it down and goes to call Holly in an attempt to reunite with his estranged wife.
Like I said, it's a very stubborn woman.
The original ending is far darker. In this one, Simon is successful in his robbery and McClane is blamed for it and fired from the NYPD. A vengeful McClane then tracks Simon to Hungary and personally takes him out with a rocket launcher. This ending was refused by the studio as it didn't contain action, had a bleak tone, and portrayed McClane in a more anti-heroic fashion. Number 16, Clerks. Kevin Smith's Clerks ends on a bittersweet note, which is in keeping with the movie's general tone and theme. While Dante and Randall make amends and Dante vows to reconcile with Veronica, both he and Randall realize that they are stuck with crappy jobs.
Jesus, nobody twisted your arm to be here. You're here of your own volition.
However, Smith originally planned to end this film on a far more pessimistic note. In this ending, Dante dies in a store robbery after Randall leaves.
What, did you forget something?
Oh, I'm sorry, we're closed.
This was the ending shown at the independent feature film market, but Smith was convinced to cut it. Smith claimed that he ended Clerks in such a depressing way to add further dramatic importance to Dante being called into work on his day off. Number 15, The Descent. This horror movie has one ending, but it was cut short for the American release. In the US ending, Sarah is successful in escaping the cave. Even though she's clearly traumatized by her experiences inside the cave, she survives the ordeal. This sequence is also seen in the original UK ending, but it also goes further. After getting scared by the bloody Juno, Sarah awakens in the darkened cave, revealing that she had dreamed her escape. She then sees a vision of her dead daughter and the crawlers get her. This coda sequence was cut from the US release as it was believed that American audiences wouldn't like the hopeless ending. Number 14, Wayne's World. The concept of alternate endings is spoofed in Wayne's World, which sees the characters breaking the fourth wall to change the outcome of their own story. The original ending is incredibly dark, but the darkness is used to comedic effect. Crucial Taunt doesn't get a record contract. Cassandra breaks up with Wayne and goes with Benjamin. Wayne learns that his ex-girlfriend is pregnant, and Garth dies in an electrical fire that destroys Wayne's house.
Why, God? Why?
Wayne and Garth then break the fourth wall and restart the ending, conducting a Scooby-Doo parody that reveals Benjamin as Old Man Withers.
Why, it's Old Man Withers, the guy who runs the haunted amusement park.
They then restart for a third time, resulting in the mega happy ending that actually concludes the film.
Isn't it great that we're all better people?
Number 13, Rocky Balboa. There was some concern in a sixth Rocky movie, as Sylvester Stallone was 60 years old when it was released. However, the age issue was smartly addressed in the film, and it resulted in arguably the best Rocky film since the original.
And you got arthritis in your neck, and you've got calcium deposits on most of your joints, so sparring is out.
It ends in a similar manner to the first movie, with Rocky losing the fight but earning personal satisfaction. And like the first movie, Rocky doesn't even listen to the outcome, being too engrossed in his own personal journey. It was a great bookend to the original, and it was probably the most realistic outcome. In the alternate ending, Rocky sticks around after the fight and wins by split decision. All things considered, the theatrical ending is far more meaningful. Number 12, Toy Story 4. While we didn't really need a fourth Toy Story movie, we're glad we got it. Not only was it visually gorgeous and hilarious, but it featured an emotional ending that had everyone reaching for the tissues. Deciding to live with Bo Peep on the road, Woody gives his sheriff's badge to Jessie and becomes a lost toy who travels with a carnival. The alternate ending completely flips Bo's motivations, and she begins to long for child companionship again. She meets and goes home with the kid from the store, leaving Woody heartbroken and alone yet again.
Molly, Andy, Bonnie, all these kids. We're there for them. We belong to them. But I want you to know, I'm yours. I always will be.
His fate is left unclear, but he likely returns to Bonnie and his friends. This ending, perhaps rightfully, never made it past the storyboard stage. Number 11, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Based on Brian Lee O'Malley's series of graphic novels, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World ends on an optimistic note. Scott defeats Gideon, shares an emotional farewell with knives, and walks hand in hand through a magic door with Ramona.
Go get her.
What?
You've been fighting for her all along.
But what about you?
I'll be fine.
This is the same ending found in O'Malley's graphic novel. However, the movie entered production before his novel was finished, and it contained an original ending in which Ramona leaves by herself and Scott gets back together with knives.
So do you want to go to the arcade or whatever?
Well, I don't have any quarters.
I do.
However, this ending received a mixed reaction from test audiences, and O'Malley published his final novel before the movie was released. The theatrical ending was then hastily assembled in reshoots to match O'Malley's book and satisfy the dissatisfied test audiences.
I know what they're doing in the films. I'm going to do something different. So what Brian eventually did was different from the outlines that we had.
Number 10, Interstellar. Christopher Nolan's Interstellar ends on a suitably twisty note. Cooper enters a tesseract and begins interacting with past Murphy through her wristwatch, realizing that he is her supposed ghost.
It was you. You were my ghost.
Murphy then uses Cooper's knowledge to save humanity, and an elderly Murphy is briefly reunited with Cooper before she dies. It's certainly a bittersweet affair, but the original ending was straight up tragic. In the original script, the wormhole collapses on Cooper and he dies before he can interact with young Murph. Unfortunately, not much else is known about the ending, including the fate of humanity. But one thing is for sure, Cooper would certainly not be meeting his own elderly daughter.
You told him I like farming.
Number 9, 28 Days Later. This is not a happy movie, and if writer Alex Garland and director Danny Boyle had their way, it would not have a happy ending. In the original ending, Jim is rushed to a hospital after being shot and is desperately operated on by Selena.
Deep breaths, Jim. Deep breaths. Hold down.
Unfortunately, Jim dies from his injuries, and Selena and Hannah walk into an unknown future. It's grim, but it fits the movie's tone and ends Jim's story with a satisfying bookend. However, test audiences reacted negatively to the ending, so it was changed to a happier conclusion in which Jim survives, the gang is rescued, and the infected die of starvation.
Do you think he saw us this time?
Both Garland and Boyle prefer the original, referring to it as the true ending. Number 8, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. This is the rare sequel that stands toe-to-toe with the original, and it ends the Terminator story in a highly satisfying manner. Seriously, let's just forget the other movies exist. Skynet is hindered from taking over the world, and the Terminator sacrifices itself to guarantee a safe future free of rampaging robots.
It has to end here.
I order you not to go. I order you not to go. I order you not to go.
It's clear that Judgment Day was prevented, but this is beaten over the viewer's head in the movie's extended edition. The edition's alternate ending takes place in 2029, and it shows an elderly Sarah watching John play with his daughter. While this plays out, Sarah tells the audience that Judgment Day never occurred, as if that wasn't obvious.
August 29th, 1997 came and went. Nothing much happened. Michael Jackson turned 40. There was no Judgment Day.
Number 7, Seven. This David Fincher thriller contains one of the most perfectly downbeat endings in movie history. Everyone knows how it goes. Mills learns what's in the box and becomes the sin of wrath by killing John Doe in retaliation. Mills is then taken away, and Somerset sadly reflects on the state of the world.
Ernest Hemingway once wrote, "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for." I agree with the second part.
Unfortunately, the famous box twist caused a stir with the studio. Various alternate endings were suggested, including one in which Mills doesn't shoot Doe and one that replaces the head of Tracy with a dog. In one storyboard ending, Somerset personally takes out Doe instead of Mills. However, both David Fincher and Brad Pitt fought for the original ending, and they were obviously successful. Number 6. Little Shop of Horrors. The 1986 remake of the original Roger Corman classic ends on an ambiguous note. Seymour learns that his plant Audrey 2 is actually an alien, and it accidentally causes its own demise in an electrical fire. Seymour then reunites with Audrey, and an Audrey 2 bud is spotted in the front yard of their suburban home. The original ending was more downbeat, as in end of the world downbeat. Audrey 2 eats both Audrey and Seymour and proceeds to take over the world. Right before the credits, Audrey 2 breaks the fourth wall and prepares to eat the viewer. This was meant to honor the off-Broadway production, which contains a similarly apocalyptic ending and a similar fourth wall breaking gimmick. Number 5. The Butterfly Effect. It's always hard to conclude a time travel story without opening a slew of plot holes. The Butterfly Effect had the perfect solution. In the original director's cut ending, Evan travels back to the womb and strangles himself with his own umbilical cord.
Heart rate is accelerating.
What's happening?
You have no lifeline, no soul. You were never meant to be.
This, in turn, leads to a happier timeline in which his friends live better and more fulfilling lives. It's certainly a little goofy, but it's definitely memorable. Unfortunately, it was changed for the movie's theatrical release. In the new ending, Evan fixes the timeline by upsetting Kaylee in the past and burns his journals to prevent more destructive time hopping.
I hate you, and if you ever come near me again, I'll kill you and your whole damn family.
He then walks by Kaylee on the streets of New York but decides against pursuing her. Number 4. The Shining. The ending of this Stanley Kubrick masterpiece is still being debated to this day. As everyone knows, both Danny and Wendy escape the hotel while Jack freezes to death inside the hedge maze. The movie then cuts to an old photo from 1921 that shows Jack posing with a large group of partiers. What does it mean? No one really knows. The alternate ending is equally ambiguous. Following Jack's death, Ullman visits Wendy and Danny in the hospital. He explains that nothing could be found to verify Wendy's outlandish story and gives Danny the same tennis ball that was tossed to him by Room 237. What this means is also unclear, but it's obvious that Ullman has some type of supernatural connection to the Overlook. Number 3. Army of Darkness. The third Evil Dead movie gets really weird with it, as Ash travels back to the Middle Ages and battles the titular Army of Darkness. The ending sees Ash returning to his own time after drinking a potion and reciting a magic phrase.
Remember, you must recite the words exactly.
He then takes out a single deadite inside a department store, having incorrectly recited the incantation.
But in my own way, I am king. Hail to the king, baby.
In the original ending, Ash accidentally takes 7 drops of the poison instead of 6, placing him in a barren post-apocalyptic future. However, Universal wasn't having it and demanded that the filmmakers shoot a new and more optimistic ending. In the process, they also prevented another sequel from taking place. Who else would have loved to see Ash in an apocalyptic future? Number 2. Get Out. The ending of Get Out is quite brilliant. Just as Chris is strangling Rose, they are lit up by the approaching lights of a cop car. It seems like Chris will be arrested, but it turns out to be Chris's friend Rod, and Chris is rescued and taken home.
I told you not to go in that house.
Unfortunately, the brief fear of Chris's arrest is actually brought to life in the movie's original ending. The cop lights do not belong to Rod, and Chris is sent to prison for the deaths of the Armitage family. Rod visits Chris in prison, and Chris prevents him from investigating.
I just take it from the top, walk me through it again, Rod. I'm good.
This pessimistic ending received a poor reaction at test screenings, so writer-director Jordan Peele decided to make it happier.
And it became very clear by showing people the movie that they needed a hero.
Mm-hmm.
They needed the movie to be an escape.
Number 1, I Am Legend. Based in part on Richard Matheson's novel of the same name, I Am Legend misses the entire point of Matheson's story. In the end, Neville realizes that by being the last human on Earth, he is now a boogeyman legend to a new race of vampires. The movie interprets the title in a more heroic sense, as Neville sacrifices himself to provide the cure to humanity.
On September 9th, 2012, at approximately 8:49 p.m., he discovered that cure.
However, the alternate ending is more in keeping with the novel's theme. In it, Neville realizes that the experiments he's been conducting on the Darkseekers has made him a kidnapper and a monster in their eyes. It's also far more pessimistic as Neville gives up his test subject and does not discover a cure.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.